Jack Benjamin here, reporter for The Media Leader, and I'm with Rob Collier, head of strategy at MTM. So MTM actually just released some research ahead of this event that we're at, CTV World Summit. It's called ScreenThink Research. Tell me a little bit about it. I know it has to deal with Netflix password sharing crackdown and what the effect of that has been.
Yeah, sure. So ScreenThink is our regular tracker. So we run it twice a year for a whole range of clients in the UK, and it looks at perceptions from a consumer perspective on a whole range of TV services, video watching, and we track all of the SVODs, we track broadband adoption, we track how people, what their perceptions are of a whole range of services. So we track, one of the questions we ask in the survey is, do you have access to Netflix and how? So some people will say I'm the primary subscriber or I borrow it from a friend. And so we've tracked that over time, and we've seen as the kind of password clampdown has kind of gone through time, that the number of people who sharing passwords is reducing, but crucially that the number of people who are subscribing to Netflix in the UK is going up. So Netflix is increasing the number of paying subscribers within their base without seeing a drop-off in people saying, do you know what, I'm sharing this password, I don't want to subscribe anymore because I was getting it for free from a friend. They're actually saying, no, do you know what, I'm going to pay.
So given that success, do you expect other streaming services to take a similar tactic? I mean, the way that Netflix rolled out the password sharing crackdown, they signaled it to market months and months in advance. I mean, they were very careful about this. It especially went against their branding of a few years ago of share your password with lots of friends. So I suppose, do you expect this to catch on?
I think it's a really tough one. Obviously, all of the operators would like to maximize their subscription revenue, and this is one way, right? So people sharing passwords will reduce the kind of revenue opportunity. But equally, I think Netflix, like you mentioned, did take quite a cautious approach to market, and I'm sure internally it was quite progressive. So, a bit of messaging, a kind of soft nudges in the UI, and then slowly kind of turning the screw on people who were sharing with lots of people. And so obviously it's a success for Netflix, so it's shown that it can be done. But at the same time, we see that Netflix has a really, really strong content proposition. It's a really popular service. Awareness is really high. It's the biggest operator in the market. So it's quite, it'd be quite difficult for smaller operators kind of follow in those footsteps.
You were actually on a panel earlier today already. What was that panel about, and why were you there talking?
So, as well as ScreenThink, we also have a product called 3 Reasons, which forecasts the long-form video market in the UK. So we use data from ScreenThink, but also from a whole range of other sources. So we were invited there to talk about some of the perspectives that we have from both of those data sets. The panel that I was on was titled, Will Smart TVs Replace Set-top Boxes? The short answer is almost entirely but. The kind of key headlines I would say is, it's very hard to buy a TV that isn't smart these days. There's an increasing reason to kind of plug them in for a whole range of odd services. But at the same time, replacement cycles for TVs is quite long. So you might end up in a situation where you've got new services or new ways of watching that aren't supported by your current TV because it's old. You get to the end of the life cycle, you don't necessarily want to buy a new one. So you might go out and buy a Chromecast or a Fire Stick to add a new way of watching to a TV. And kind of also related to that, there's a whole range of secondary sets in households which aren't smart. That people buy a new TV and their main telly goes to the kitchen or a bedroom, and so you've got a whole population of devices which don't have IP technology in them, and so there's a role for pucks and peripherals in that base to allow people to watch the content they want to watch.
What's the implication, I suppose, of smart TVs replacing more and more sets, even if it is slower than people might think?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is the way that IP technology and IP viewing is changing the dynamics of who controls the UI within a household, right? And our view is that allows operators, TV UI operators, to control prominence, to control discovery, and fundamentally kind of put themselves in a position where they have a say in how content is monetized, whether that's by promoting certain subscription services, taking share of advertising, or creating their own advertising solutions around their kind of smart TV UI. That shift of who, is it a set-top box that's the kind of default device? Is it a streaming stick? Is it the smart TV interface? I think will play out, and I think there's loads of themes that we're seeing in the conference that really touches on that.
Last question. If you had to pick one big challenge that the industry needs to meet, this sector of the industry needs to meet in order to have success over the next 3-4 years, what would you say is the biggest challenge facing the industry?
I think the biggest challenge facing the whole industry, whether or not the connected TV industry, is that I think we're going to see a much faster shift towards connected TV ad formats in the next few years, and I think that's still a real pickle. If I'm an advertiser and I want to take advantage of all of the kind of connected viewing that we're seeing, there's the whole plethora of ways that I can get to market as an advertiser, and I think the kind of subscription model is very stable, it's very mature, but the advertising market is fraught with complexities. And there's lots of different sales houses and lots of different kind of control mechanisms, which, if you want to keep creating value in the kind of connected TV space, you'd probably expect some standardization. So that's 4 to 5 years. I'm doing a project at the moment which looks over a much longer timescale, and those challenges are very different.
Well, I look forward to talking with you about that in the future.
Yeah.
Rob Collier, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
If you like this video, please subscribe. The Media Leader is the UK's leading source of analysis, opinion and data for people who work in advertising and media.